Hello everybody, how are you? In this video we will talk about WDS. WDS stands for Windows Deployment Service. Windows Deployment Service is a service. So WDS or Windows Deployment Service is a service on the server. For what? From its name, Windows Deployment. And from the server, instead of I have for example 100 computer in the network and I have a server. Instead of using or install the operating system, the Windows operating system, in the every computer, I just install the operating system, the Windows in the server, and then from the server I can deploy the operating system to all the client in the network. I mean, from the server can install the operating system for all clients. For example, 100 clients in the same time. So it is very important. Before we install the WDS, we should already install the domain controller, and we installed in the computer in the server, and we should install also the DHCP because we should have IP address. Every computer we should configure or deploy the IP address and DNS for the computers, and also DNS. Why? Because DNS is very important to know, not just for resolve or to map domain name to the IP address, but also the DNS domain name system is called service locator. Service locator. For what that mean? If the client want a service or want an application from the server, we should using the DNS to find the service. So the DNS responsible also to find the service for the client, called service locator. The client cannot access the service by the IP address, should have a domain name or should have a name of the service. So the DNS also service locator, not just map IP address to the domain. Also service locator have a name of the service, and client can access the service with the DNS. So we should install the DHCP and domain controller and DNS. Now I have a client, for example, and the client want operating system. I boot the client and I want to install operating system from the client. The first thing, the client want to install the operating system. So the first thing, go to the network and request for IP address from the DHCP server. The DHCP server will respond and assign the IP address. Now this computer, this client have IP address. After that the client request for the domain controller. Client say I need the IP address for domain controller. So just go to the DNS because I want domain controller service locator. DNS is service locator. I want the service called domain controller from the server. So just go to the DNS and searching for the domain controller, and then domain controller response, and for example this IP address for the domain controller from the DNS response and send the IP address for the domain controller. After that the client go to the domain controller and searching for the service. I need WDS. WDS will install with the domain controller. Return the WDS. Yes, I have WDS here in the server. Now request operating system from the WDS server or from the server. After that the WDS server responds to deploy the operating system by the ISO image. So this operation, for that we need the domain controller and we need the domain controller and DNS server and DHCP. The first thing, the client request for IP address from the DHCP server. DHCP server will assign the IP address, will response and assign the IP address in the client. After that the client searching for domain controller. Say I want the domain controller. Domain controller is a service. So the DNS is a service locator. So DNS say yes, response yes, I have domain controller. This is the IP address for the domain controller. Now the client again go to in the domain controller and search for the WDS. Say I need the WDS, Windows deployment system. The domain controller say yes, I have a WDS, it is installed in the server. So request for the operating system from the WDS server, and then WDS server deploy the image or deploy the Windows by using the image or ISO file. This operation. Now go to the practical side, go to the server. Now the first thing, I should install the WDS in the server. As I said before, can be the WDS or the service or any service, the DSCP, DNS or anything, can be in the separate server or in the same server. Now I am in the same server, just from manage and add rows and feature. Then next, next, next again. Now I want the WDS. Just select it here and next, next, next again, and deployment service, and I will let it by default like this: deployment service server and transport server, and next again and install, and just waiting. Now after complete, just close and go to the tools and Windows deployment services. Click on it. You can see here we have servers and serverslab.com. Double click. You can see Windows deployment services is not configured. Now we want just to configure. Just right click and configure server. Now you can see here the server is a member of an Active Directory domain services. This server, WDS server, is a member, like a user, like everything, a member of the domain controller. So you should already install the domain controller. If you see it here also, if you check it here, you can see the first thing request the IP address. After that, assign the IP address from DSCP, and then call the domain controller from the DNS server. The DNS server responds for the or send the IP address for the domain controller service. We said DNS is the service locator. After that, here the client request or searching for WDS inside domain controller. So it is a part or a member of the domain controller, the WDS. So searching it inside the domain controller. So here the server is a member of the Active Directory domain service. ID that mean Active Directory, and DS that mean domain system. Also it can, if the server supports standalone mode that mean I can separate between WDS and the domain controller. Then is and the active DSCP server on the network should have domain controller. The first thing see here say, before you begin, ensure the following requirements are met. So the first thing you should have Active Directory, and then you should have DSCP server. After that, this is an active DNS server on your network. Now next, after that here, integrated with Active Directory or standalone server. Now I want to integrate it with Active Directory. Next, here I want just to add the WDS, this service. I want to install it now in the server. I just add the path. For example, I add the new folder WDS in the C partition, or you can create a new partition. Now new, yes, and next. Here do not respond to any client or respond only for non-client. Just here I want to respond to all client computers, noun and unknown. Respond for client for what? This WDS server for deploy the Windows, right? So I want to respond to every client in the network. If the client asks for the or request for the operating system, I want to respond it. So or here just I say click on it and then next. Now I will copy the needed file or to install the WDS in the server. Finish. Now if you go to the C, yes, in the server, now I am in my server, just go to the C partition, and you can see now we have WDS. I make it. Inside it you can see everything, this thing here. Now here go to the server.lab after configure it. Now the first thing I want to install the boot, because you know if you want to install the image, the ISO image in the computer, the first thing you should have a boot to boot the computer and then install the image. So now I want to boot or install the image or install the boot, no problem. The first thing I want to install the boot and image. But the boot and image I should add it to the server from the CD or flash or something like this, right? I don't have the boot, I don't have an image, I don't have an ISO in the server. So I should have the, or I can install it from the internet, no problem. But here I want to using the CD, for example, to install the image. I said here the VMware or virtual machine is just a computer. Now here it is a computer. Now in this computer I want to add the CD-ROM. How can I add the CD for the image? Just right click here and setting. You can see here CD DVD. Now I want to add an ISO image. Just to browse. You should download it in the computer, in your computer, in the lab, in the Jihan University we have. I install it here. I have for example Windows 8. I have Windows 7. Anything you want. Now for example I want to install Windows 8. For example, I have ISO. You just searching in the Google, on the internet, just Windows 8 or Windows 7 and ISO version like this, and you can install. Now I want to add it here. Now I add the ISO. Now here's CD DVD, because the Windows server is like a computer, like a standalone computer, and inside it we have a server, right? Install the operating system for the server. Now I add the CD-ROM to this computer because I want to add or to install the image or Windows 7 or Windows 8. Now I can install or add the CD for the Windows. Okay. Now here I want to add the boot or install the image. Just right click on the image, add install image, and then you can add any name here. Next, file location. Now I want the file. The file is from the CD. Just click here, browse, and in the computer you can see I have C and I have now CD, because I mount the CD here. From here setting, here CD, I can add the CD. Inside the CD I add the operating system or image. Now from the CD, from the D, and you have here sources, click, and I want the install. I want image here. Next. Now we want Windows 8, this version or this version, to type Pro. For example, I just want the first one, the Pro, Professional, and next. Next again, the ISO, or just install the Windows 8 in the server. Now we want just to install it here in the server, just to configure the server to install, and then the server will deploy for the client. After complete, just finish and finish. Now I install the image. After that I install the boot. We said we have boot and image. Add boot image. Also the boot from the CD, same thing. From CD here, from DVD, and sources, same thing. But we have, instead of install, now we have boot dot, and then next again. Next, and also just waiting for complete. After complete, also finish here. Now I install the install image and boot image. Now we complete to just to configure or add the WDS server in the server, or add the WDS service in the server. Now we need the client, we need the computer without operating system, not a computer, not a client for the, and with the operating system like Windows 7. Now we need the computer. In the virtual machine I can create a new computer. We say the virtual machine, you can create many computers inside the computer. So now I want to create a new computer. Now I have Windows Server and I want to create a new computer without operating system. Just a new virtual machine. And then here the first one. Next, here install, or now I will install the operating system later, because I want to install operating system from the server, not just install it locally. Now just next, the type operating system, Microsoft Windows, and I will install Windows 8. Now so I just 8, and next here the name and location, same thing. Next, I can add the how much gigabyte I need here, 60 for example. Next, finish. Now I add just a new computer. Now I add this a new computer. Now I need in this computer, I want to make it in the same network. So just from here setting and go to the network and make it host only, because I want to make it in the same network or the like a same switch with the Windows Server. And the Windows Server also we have setting, we make it before and host only. So the both should be in the host only. After that, just power. You can see after power the client, this client without operating system. This client I mean here. After I just run the program or run the operating system or the computer will ask the IP address, because the computer without IP address in the network, there is no operating system, will ask the IP address, and from DHCP will respond with IP address. After that, we're searching for domain controller in the DNS, and DNS will request or send the domain controller IP. After that, go to the domain controller and searching for WDS. Now in the server, we install the WDS, right? And we complete. After that, yes, I have WDS, and the Windows, this computer request the operating system, and WDS will send the Windows 8 as operating system. Why Windows 8? Because here in the server, I add the Windows 8 now. So now just run this computer.